All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. It's Millennial Trades. It's January 15th, 2023. A little bit different kind of video today. I actually want to discuss economics in the context of the divine, in the context of God and God's creation. And I'm going to go through a couple of books here. We may reference some of this book that I have been reading. I'm about halfway through this book right now. I've read how many pages? About 279 pages. It's taken me maybe a week or so. So we're getting through this book, Too Big to Fail. But I went ahead and opened another book because I finished a book about Holy Russia last night. And so I figured I'd pick up this textbook. I bought this a couple of weeks ago. Some of you on Instagram may have saw this, but I did pick this up. It's Basic Economics. There you go. Basic Economics. It's from Boundary Stone, Birmingham, Alabama. So take that for what it is. On the back of the book, it says, an economics in the great Anglo-American natural law tradition, written in clear, precise English, no pretensions of scientism, limited use of charts and diagrams, just masterful language. So emphasis is placed on free market, free enterprise, and limited government. The reason I want to talk about economics in the context of the divine, in the context of God's creation, is because this particular book starts out with a Genesis quote, which kind of blew my mind. I flipped through the book a little bit when I was at the bookstore, but it just looked like such a nice textbook. There's no annotations or anything in it. I mean, it's nothing but text. There's no diagrams. Well, there's a few diagrams, but it's basically just concepts, right? Economic concepts. But when I realized that they started the book off with a quote from Genesis, it blew my mind, really, to see that in an economics book. Now, when I said at the back of the book, it says an economics in the great Anglo-American natural law tradition, they explain in this book that if you actually open up the book and read it, they explain they're not talking about Anglo-American in an ethnic way. It's not an ethnic thing. I know when people hear Anglo-Saxons, they think, all kinds of misconceptions they may have about that. But it's the traditions, right, of the English that got transferred to America. But where did the English get their traditions from when it comes to natural law, religion, economics? Well, they got their traditions from the Greco-Roman world that existed maybe 1,000 years before Great Britain became the empire that it was. So when we think about economics, it always gets, one of the things the book talks about is it always gets filtered through, obviously, religion, theology, philosophy, but then it gets filtered through the extremes within politics, which could go all the way to the one side, which is anarchy, to the other side, which is complete totalitarianism, where the government controls everything about the economy. And but economics is actually, this book makes the argument, and a very good argument, I'll explain in a moment. Economics is a divine order. It's part of God's divine creation. It is an earthly, materialistic reality that we have to deal with, but it's part of God's creation, just like anything else in the material world that we experience is part of God's creation. So economics is not the result of politics. Economics is not the result of philosophy or theology. Economics comes way before any of that, right? Economics existed before theology, philosophy, politics, left, right, they have all kinds of, they talk about the Fabians, the Marxists, the traditional socialists. I mean, there's so many different isms and all these different schools of thought when it comes to economics. But a lot of that is just filtered through modern politics, if that makes sense. So let me start with the first quote here. This is the very first thing this book says, okay? This is in chapter 1, Basic Economics. It's by Clarence B. Carson and Paul A. Cleveland. I have no idea who those people are, but I'm sure, they wrote this book, so they're probably pretty influential people. But so why basic economics? And the very first part of the book starts with the Dominion Mandate. All right, this is an important concept, the dominion mandate. And God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish and the sea, and over the birds, and of the heavens, and over every living thing that moves on earth." So the dominion mandate, that's the reason economics and finance is a reality, and it always has been a reality. That's a reason why we need money. Right, we need a medium of exchange because we have dominion over the earth. And again, this goes back to Genesis, God's divine creation. So thinking about that, and then you think about Adam and Eve and the garden. There's a reason Adam and Eve were not in the wilderness; they were in a garden. See, a lot of us, I fall into this pattern of thought a lot, where we sort of believe working is part of our punishment, right? Or we're working because we're fallen, or we're working because, God's punishing the fallen humans. But the fact that Adam and Eve were in a garden and not a wilderness means that they were working. They were tilling the land. And this goes, the key to this is that this was a reality. Economics, part of God's divine plan, was a reality way before the fall, right? The working, the fact that we have to work, we have to produce, we have to be productive members of the society, that's not a result of the fall. That's part of God's creation. And that's a mistake I think a lot of us fall into, is we feel like we're being punished, right? Because we have to work, we have to produce, we have to, take care of ourselves, and part of our fallen nature is economics and the materialism that may be associated with finance and economics. But that's not the case at all. The fact that Adam and Eve were in a garden, they weren't in a wilderness, they were in a garden, that means they were tilling the land. So they were working for their fruits, right? For their efforts were what they were sustaining themselves with. So this is part of divine creation. This is part of God's law, right? This is what the first chapter of the book is about. Before they even really get into different schools of thought when it comes to economics and the politics that influence that, the reality of finance and economics goes all the way back to Genesis, before the fall. It's part of God's creation. When God created mankind, the way the divine order was some sort of economic system. So it could be bartering and trading. It could be using gold and silver. It could be using paper money. It could be complete fiat in a big debt bubble. But whatever the case is, money, finance, economics, it's part of the divine order. It was something that God gave to us. It's a gift from God. And it's also a gift from God that we have money, that we have a medium of exchange that is convenient for all of us, right? If you look into the laws of double coincidence, just imagine a world where we don't have a medium of exchange. We don't have like a dollar or silver coins or gold coins. Imagine a world like that, and trying to acquire everything that you need and everything that you want, with no medium of exchange. So, to say that money is the root of all evil, which is another kind of quote that we hear a lot of the times, and we hear it, I guess, in a Christian context, it's actually not true at all. There's one more thing I wanted to read to you guys before I wrap this up, because I do want to keep this, I'm sort of introducing this topic here. So in the beginning, in terms of the origin of her problem, the Bible gives an answer in the book of Genesis. After God created Adam and Eve, he placed them in a garden of Eden and gave them a mission. There are several observations to be noted in the description of life in its perfect state before the fall. Eden was a garden rather than a wilderness. Planning had gone into its design to provide fully for the needs of its inhabitants. All their material needs could be met by the numerous plants that grew there and the bountiful fruit they produce. Nevertheless, the man and the woman still had to tend the garden to produce the things that they wanted. Beyond that, in Genesis 1:28, in what is known as the dominion mandate, which I read that's the first quote in this book, they were instructed to venture out beyond the garden and to turn the entire world, the entire earth, into a garden by taking dominion over it. This project could only be accomplished by work. Thus, even in the condition of moral perfection, work was instituted to achieve a purpose. The reality that we must work to produce things, and thus that there will always be a cost connected to the things we want, has always been a part of the human condition. For me, some of this stuff is very profound. I've never thought about finance or economics in a divine sense. I guess I tend to think of it in the terms of materialism, right? It's part of the material world. If you go back to maybe what some of the Gnostics say, that the material world is completely evil, it can kind of almost lead you to believe that money is evil, that, finance and economics, it's just so evil. Trading, making money is evil. It's not evil. All of this is part of God's divine plan. And it can be, apparently, according to this book, there's references to this divine plan where economics is included in Genesis for the simple fact that they were in a garden. They weren't in the wilderness. And the dominion mandate, where God told them to expand outside of the garden and take dominion of the entire world, the entire earth. So I want to leave you there with that. I hope this was interesting. If you enjoyed this video, you want to see more videos like this, please do give it a thumbs up. You can subscribe to the channel. You can follow me on Instagram at Millennial Trades. Leave your thoughts down below. And as always, until next time, I'll see you on the next video.